Today, I'm going to be talking all about Chiron. I think Chiron is a really important part of the chart to understand because I think it can really help us understand our experiences and work with the energy instead of against it. So, I'm briefly just going to talk about what Chiron is, and then I'm going to go through each of the signs and the houses. So, Chiron is named after a Greek healer, philosopher, and teacher who ironically could not heal himself. And Chiron is actually symbolized by a key in the natal chart because we literally can unlock this minor planet's major lessons and teachings. Chiron is known as the wounded healer or teacher and represents our core wounds and how we can overcome them. So, in essence, Chiron represents pain and healing, but Chiron, only isn't about pain. There's much more to Chiron. Chiron represents our potential, the potential we have to heal ourselves and heal others through working through our own painful experiences. Ultimately, Chiron in our chart will show us how to learn from our pain and use it as a source of strength. So it will teach us that our deepest and most sensitive wounds can actually be the pathway to the most transformational forms of healing, not only just for ourselves, but for others. So, what can happen is we can transform something within us, and then we can actually end up being a healer for other people who are also experiencing that. I like to associate the potential of Chiron with post traumatic growth. We all often hear about post traumatic stress and post traumatic trauma, right? But the higher, more positive way to look at post traumatic stress, is that we can channel that and we can actually make it something really beautiful. So we can take that pain and transform it. So, through this process of going through this pain and this challenge and overcoming it, can make us quite a bit more sympathetic. And that's kind of what Chiron's all about, turning this pain into power. And I think that being conscious of our Chiron is just so important as we can understand our experience on a deeper level and consciously choose to work through it. If we don't really understand our Chiron and we're out there being triggered and wounded constantly, we could project that. It could be self destructive, it could be very painful, and we would just continue this cycle all through life. So we have to choose to consciously address it. I always say triggers are our teachers. I didn't make this up. I'm sure I got it from someone a long time ago and I just held on to it because I loved it because it's true. Triggers are our teachers, and Chiron will continue to trigger our deepest wound until we choose to address it head on. And we always have that choice. Wherever our Chiron sits in our natal chart will also indicate, maybe where we're a little extra sensitive, have more struggles, have more traumas. And also it might be how we overcompensate. So I'll get into that as I get into each of the signs and houses. But it's where we, might be our worst enemy. We often have to put a lot of effort into dealing with it. But again, if we choose to face the pain instead of running away from it, we can transform it. And that can be a really beautiful thing. So I'm now going to get into the individual signs and houses, but keep in mind, for example, I'm going to do Aries and the first house, and I'm going to talk about that. Then Taurus and also the second house and talk about that. But keep in mind, you want to look at what zodiac sign your Chiron is, which is one layer, and then the other layer is what house that is in, because the house may have another layer to what that experience may look like and where it will show up in your life. For example, if someone has a Chiron in Gemini in their 11th house, Gemini is communication. The 11th house can be groups of friends. So maybe there is a wound in terms of, bullying or gossip or not being heard in groups or something. That's just a very, superficial example, but just keep that in mind. You want to look at both aspects. So we're going to start with Aries or the first house. So if your Chiron is placed in Aries or your first house, this is all about your sense of self. This is your identity, your physical body, how you express yourself, how other people perceive you. This is right front and center, right? So for some people, there literally could have been a physical injury or like a birth defect or something that was visible to others that has really caused you a lot of pain, right? So if you were born with a deformed limb or just something that is unusual to your physical image, it could be that. It could also be that you weren't ever able to be yourself. Maybe you grew up in an environment where if you tried to take the lead or try to put yourself out there or be authentic, it was shot down. And so now you struggle with knowing who you are. Maybe as a child you had to fight to be noticed. As a result, you might struggle with asking for what you want or need, taking leadership, putting yourself out there. And how this manifests in your behavior will vary, right? So, some might be overly aggressive, right? Overcompensating to try to get your needs met, to try to lead, to try to be heard. Other people might withdraw and not put themselves out there, right? And with a Chiron and Aries, like, you have leadership ability. You can transform this. So healing your Chiron in Aries or the first house is going to involve really learning who you are, right? At your core, at that soul level, who are you? And once you are able to identify that and honor that, you're going to be able to feel more confident taking the lead, and you're not going to need to overcompensate to be heard. You'll be able to express your uniqueness, and as a result, you could even be able to help other people access who they are, help them find out who they are at their core level, what their true identity is. So your biggest challenge will be to overcome insecurities when it comes to self and identity or the physical body, so that you can be independent, take lead, and stand in your power. So the next one is Chiron in Taurus, or the second house. So, Taurus is a very physical energy, tangible earth sign, right? The second house is a money house. So often a Chiron either in Taurus or the second house can indicate almost like a wound of neglect. At some point in life, maybe you felt like you didn't get enough of something. So that could be material, that could be emotional, that could be mental. This person could have grown up in poverty without financial stability. And due to that, they may have grown up feeling very poverty consciousness, I think is the word I'm looking for, feeling like their value and self-worth is very attached to what they bring in. So if you're someone with this placement, maybe you really struggle with bringing in money, and as a result, you feel really bad about yourself. You struggle to see value in yourself. If your family didn't have a lot of income, you might have felt less than compared to your peers. And as a result, you may overcompensate here, right? You may be a workaholic. You may be a little stingy with your money. You may not know how to kind of let loose a bit, right? Taurus is a very fixed energy. So your lesson here is to understand that your net worth does not equate to your value, right? How much we make doesn't mean we're more worthy if we have more, money in our bank account. And it's really important for you to understand to not overwork, but not underwork either, right? Because you might undervalue yourself. Like, you might have this belief that, like, I can never make good money. And so you self-sabotage, right? So if you're someone who just, every time you make a certain amount of money, you just kind of cap out at that, really start to explore your beliefs around money and self-worth, how you grew up with money, and work through that, because that might be blocking you subconsciously. And if you're one of those people who are workaholics and kind of greedy or stingy, know that money is energy, and the more you hold on to it, it can't breathe, right? It's a relationship. So I always use that analogy. If you were to hoard a relationship and not breathe and not let it out, like, it would die, right? It wouldn't survive. And so know that money is just energy, and that you need to process this experience growing up, probably in a position where you didn't have a lot of money, or where you did and it was taken from you, or you felt less than for some reason. I know I keep referring to money because that's like the biggest thing I can see with this energy, but it could be something else. I mean, another way it could have shown up is, maybe you just lived in an area where everyone was wealthy and your family was just middle class, right? And so while you didn't grow up without enough, everyone else seemed to have something that you didn't. And as a result, there's that low self esteem. Now, the gift in this is that as you work through this wound and understand it, you have this incredible ability to help other people find their personal power and self-esteem, and maybe even help them remove money blocks and things like that. You may also find that as you build your confidence and work through this wound, that you have more ability to bring in more resources, more tangible resources, whether that's, material things, material possessions, just financial resources. So if you are someone who's struggling with that and you have this placement, that's something to work on, because once you heal that wound, the money will flow. Either way, there are lessons to be learned about money, possessions, values, all forms of physical resources. And then once you've learned these and integrated them into you, you're going to be able to help other people who either struggle with low self-worth, low self-esteem, or who struggle financially. So maybe you could, be an advisor or something like that. Overall, with this placement, Chiron and Taurus, or the second house, to really know that you are safe and secure, despite what you have in your bank account. That safety and security are a little deeper than that, but that will be something that you need to process in order to feel safe and secure, to actually bring in some tangible resources and physical security. So if you have Chiron in Gemini or the third house, so what I often see with this placement, or one of these placements, is a wound when it comes to communication. Gemini rules communication and the nervous system. So there may be, fear of talking in front of people, fear of how you communicate. In more extreme cases, maybe you had a stutter or something different about the way you communicate. Maybe you were just really shy, and felt like no one really listened to you. Maybe you felt like you weren't smart because, Gemini rules logic, how we process. Maybe you were told you were stupid or didn't think properly, or that your ideas were silly or something like that. And as a result, you might find it difficult to speak your truth. Maybe you were yelled at or punished for speaking your truth. And now it can manifest a few different ways. You may feel like you're talking too much sometimes, or talking too little, or overexpressing yourself, right? Because we can overcompensate where Chiron is. So maybe you share too much, or maybe you talk too much. And then other times you don't share enough or speak up for yourself. So there might be this kind of imbalance here, or you might lean more towards one or the other. Because Gemini also rules siblings, there might have been a wound involving the siblings. So maybe you were just a different type of learner, and maybe you were criticized by your siblings at a younger age, or your neighbors, or someone in your community, because Gemini does rule those things, the third house as well. So in this lifetime, really do what you can to speak your truth and to communicate your thoughts, your ideas, your visions. You could end up helping other people be able to speak their truth, and through working through your own wounds with communication. You actually could end up becoming a public speaker, right? I've seen that before too. So you take this wound of, fear of talking, fear of communicating, and you transform it. And now you're, communicating all over and spreading your message. I know that many of us can struggle with like cognitive distortions and like negative narratives, but I feel like with Chiron in Gemini or the third house, you might really struggle with that. Um, I'm thinking of like CBT would be really good for someone like this, cognitive behavioral therapy, to like reframe your thoughts because of whatever happened to put this wound on you, whether it was, part of past life energy leaking into this life, or being bullied or yelled at or criticized, whatever it was that put this wound here. As a result, you're probably really hard on yourself, and you probably have a lot of negative thinking patterns. And so CBT is something that could really help you get out of that, but also to put yourself in positions where you have to communicate. Practice communication, take communication courses. Some other areas with the third house are short distance travel, your neighborhood, your community. I think I mentioned siblings. So these areas might be soft spots for you. So like maybe you don't get along with your siblings, maybe they trigger you. Maybe, going back to your old home triggers you. There's something about that short distance travel. So I don't know what would link that to that. I mean, it could be cars. Maybe there was a trauma with a car, like a car accident, something like that. But overall, what I see here is it's the communication thing. So learning how to effectively express yourself with confidence is going to be how you heal this wound. And once you heal that, you can help other people do the same. So if you have Chiron in Cancer or the fourth house, Cancer is a very nurturing energy. It's very emotional, ruled by the moon. And the fourth house is all about home and family. So this one's a heavy one. I mean, they're all heavy in their own way, but there is some wounding when it comes to your home and family, your lineage, your ancestral roots. Something with domestic matters. And again, this can be from your childhood or, lifetimes before, but, typically there's something in this life as well. Perhaps it wasn't safe growing up in your environment. Perhaps home wasn't a very safe place. Cancer is this nurturing energy, but with Chiron here, there might have felt like a lack of, right? A lack of nurturing, a lack of safety and security. And because this sits at the foundation of the chart, that's why I feel like this is a heavier one, because this wound could be from your earliest experiences, maybe even experiences that you can't remember. Like I said, it could be passed down from generation to generation. You could have just felt completely abandoned by, one or both primary caregivers. This could manifest a few ways. Your parents could have been emotionally or physically abusive. There could have been some other issues in the home that distracted your caregivers from being able to give you the love and nurturing you needed. So maybe a parent was ill or had a disease or a disability. In extreme cases, this could be someone who was disconnected from their family due to, war or something like that, and don't have a connection with their roots, or were given up for adoption even, or what's the other word I'm looking for? Or even disowned. I've heard of someone with this placement whose parents were very religious, and this person decided to not follow that path, and that was very wounding for this person because the family could not accept her. Overall, there might be a deep sense of insecurity in someone with a Chiron in Cancer or the fourth house. And as a result, you might be really moody or maybe even emotionally unavailable yourself just because you're internalizing all this. You might even close yourself off completely and isolate. And you might be overly protective or hypersensitive. So again, right, we overcompensate here. Know that in order to heal this, you're going to almost have to create home and family and security for yourself, whatever that might look like, and nurture yourself, parent yourself in some ways, develop kindness, acceptance, and compassion for yourself, and maybe even doing some inner child work. Because Cancer can rule the mother, there might have been a wound connected to the mother, not always, but it could be that. It's really important for people with Chiron in Cancer or the fourth house to recreate what home is to you, have a safe, secure place, and nurture yourself. Acceptance and nurturing are really important here. And creating your own sense of home, no matter where you are, is crucial. And once you heal this, you may be able to mother someone else, whether that's physically or just, we mother our friends. We can nurture, friends and stuff like that. You're going to be better at providing what you didn't get. The opposite is that you shut everyone out, but that will just continue the cycle of pain, and you will keep being triggered until you process that. So, seek out a therapist, seek out me if you need some guidance. I love working with Chiron in the chart. And for those who have a wound related to the mother, it's really important to heal that. Healing that does not mean we forgive that person or have a relationship with that person, but that we process it in a way that it doesn't negatively impact us anymore. I want to say too, the fourth house can also be our literal home. So in some cases, depending on how it's aspected, you could have lost your home, right? You could have lost your home physically or due to like an accident or, like a fire or something like that, or, financial instability. It could have been anything. Or you could have lost your family in some way, or you might just have never felt part of a family in general. So if you have Chiron in Leo or your fifth house, Leo is all about self-expression. Leo loves to be the spotlight. The fifth house is fun, love, romance, sex. So there could be a lot of different things here. The first thing I think of is maybe that as a child, your talents were overlooked, or maybe you didn't have that opportunity to learn what they were. Maybe you loved to dance and your family were, piano or pianists, is that what they call them? Or musicians or something, and that's what they wanted you to do. And so you never got to do what you wanted because it wasn't allowed or it wasn't acceptable for some reason. And maybe you never felt like you had the chance to shine. And as a result, you might deeply fear rejection, deeply fear your unique self, maybe even shut that part of yourself off. You might have trouble with just having fun, right? The fifth house is fun. Maybe you really don't know what fun is because, like I said, growing up, maybe that wasn't allowed. Maybe you didn't get to experience play. I do know that a lot of people who have a history of trauma, especially young as children, play is not safe, right? Because it's uncertain. I'm actually reminded by a post I read by this therapist that I follow, and I just love her stuff. And I never noticed the similarities, but play can be very scary for people who have a history of trauma because play involves being spontaneous, connecting with others, touch, being seen, letting go, right? Like I think I said, spontaneous. Trauma traits are, unknown, right? Connecting with others wasn't safe. Touch wasn't safe. It was unsafe to be seen. So it literally goes against everything that play needs to flourish, right? I hope I'm making sense. And so if you're someone who is resistant to play, it doesn't mean you're not playful, but it's because you are, you've learned to be very protective of parts of yourself that were unsafe. So I hope that makes sense for someone, but I really found that post moving for me. And so anyways, getting back to like the fifth house. So maybe you had to take life too seriously. Maybe you had to look after a parent. For some reason, you didn't really get to enjoy your childhood. You didn't get to be yourself. Maybe, the fifth house is hobbies. Maybe you had a really unique hobby and it was shunned. So your major lessons and biggest wounds are around nurturing this inner child and loving yourself and letting yourself be creative, letting yourself play. Most likely you have unique talents and gifts and abilities that you have not yet realized or learned or honored. I have seen for someone, or I've heard of someone in a very particular case, depending on what aspects were being made, because the fifth house is sex, depending on the other aspects, and because the fifth house also rules children, this can sometimes talk about sexual abuse. I don't want to re-traumatize or trigger anyone, but that could be something there. Again, this person needs to embrace their inner child, do inner child work. You might even have a gift or talent that you could actually turn into a job in this type of placement, where you help other people find their uniqueness, right? Or do something to help them shine, right? Help encourage them to be themselves in some way. So I also read that with the placement here, like learning how to dance like no one's watching you, right? Being your total self and not worrying about rejection, right? There is that fear of rejection here, but you are being asked to step into who you are, your authentic self, to play, to have fun, to be creative. So if you are someone with a Chiron and Leo or the fifth house, do that inner child work. If you have children, that is a wonderful way to reconnect with your inner child. As you learn to forgive those who hurt your younger self, this is when this wound will heal and you can release yourself from all that binds you, and that's when you're truly going to shine. So if you have Chiron in Virgo or the sixth house, so Virgo is an earth sign. Virgo is the health energy, right? Virgo is all about health and organization, perfectionism. The sixth house is also a health house. It's exercise, daily routines, fitness. I think I already said that. So Chiron here, there might be, in some cases, there might be some kind of health issue, maybe a really severe health issue. Maybe you grew up really sick or something like that, and there is this wound there. Maybe you're overly paranoid and concerned about your health. And I don't want to say paranoid in a judgmental way, but maybe like a little bit of hypochondriac energy, overly obsessing about health when there might not be reasons to, or any reasons to be concerned anyway. A preoccupation with health or even physical fitness. I can see this for sure. Like in a more challenging way, this could almost be like OCD, like someone who is overly fanatic about their fitness routines, about their diets, right? So we could see some eating disorders here. We could see people who work out to the extent where it becomes an obsession or unhealthy. It could just be that you're someone who needs routine and structure to a point of excess, like it interrupts your social life, your friends, your family, because you need the structure and routine so desperately. And I mean, this could manifest different ways, right? So maybe you grew up really in a very chaotic environment, and this is how you feel safe, right? Because if I can control everything, then I'm safe. I know what to expect. That could be one way it manifests for you. It could also be like, if it's not the body or health, it could just almost be like the need to be of service, to feel important or useful. And again, I mean, maybe you were given too much responsibility at a young age, and so you just feel like you need to be responsible and that everything is like your burden to carry. It could also be that maybe you were trying to please a parent and nothing was ever good enough. And so as an adult, you're subconsciously trying to gain approval, self-approval through other people, through being of service. So if you're a people pleaser, if you struggle with saying no, poor boundaries, these are signs that this might be something you're struggling with. And the way to heal it is to is to process, what does this behavior serve, right? The behavior is serving something, right? Or we wouldn't do it. And to learn that your value and love and acceptance doesn't come because you're a hard worker or you're a person of service. You deserve love and acceptance just because you are you, right? Whereas this energy might be like, I feel like I need to do this in order to be loved, valued, accepted. And again, it's subconscious. So yeah, some ways I've seen this show up are just being like bordering on, obsessive tendencies when it comes to health, fitness, work, and just craving routine. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but if it's to the extent where you can't go with the flow sometimes or change things up, then that's when it becomes a bit of a problem. In some other cases, this person might go the other way and just give up and live in total chaos. They might neglect their own health. Overall, Chiron in Virgo or the sixth house, this person needs to learn how to deal with imperfection, needs to learn how to kind of go with the flow a bit. There's nothing wrong with systems and organization and wanting to be healthy, but anything can be in excess, right? And so this, your wounding is going to show up through these. So whether you get really sick from working out too much, whether you burn yourself out from being a workaholic, or whether you push people away because you need so much structure and routine, it will show up different for different people. The interesting thing with this placement is, Chiron in Virgo, the sixth house, can become like a super healer, like a holistic healing. You could channel that energy into helping others. So let's just say you struggled with an eating disorder and you overcome it and you deal with those core issues and the childhood issues that led up to it. You could become a therapist who specializes in eating disorders, or you could become a health coach or something like that. That's one way you can channel the energy. If you have Chiron in Libra or the seventh house, so this is all about relationships. Libra is all about one-to-one relationships, typically the romantic ones, but also, any one-to-one friendship, friendship, business relationship, and then the seventh house can rule contracts and contractual agreements. But overall, Chiron in Libra or the seventh house, there's some type of wound when it comes to a relationship. Again, this could be from past lives. It could be from your early childhood years. You were either hurt or rejected. You might have been in an abusive relationship or some type of codependent relationship. You might just have struggles when it comes to your one-to-one relationships, specifically your romantic ones, but it could just be friendships too. And as a result, you internalize that as something is wrong with you. If you are someone with this placement and you are struggling with relationships, whether it's romantic or friendships, know that these people are showing you your wound. They're triggering you so that you pay attention. So with this placement, it's really important to understand that you are whole on your own without another person. There could be some subconscious need to be with another person because that is how you feel whole for whatever reason. It could be that you are a child of a divorced family, right? Maybe your parents split up or were distanced with each other or were codependent themselves. There is a need about finding balance between you and another person, be it romantic or friendship. There could be the tendency to get into these codependent, enmeshed relationships, but to know that you are an individual without this person, right? So really important to find yourself, and through finding yourself is how you'll balance these relationships out better. I hope that I'm making sense. What I see here often too is like if someone with, I remember someone who had a Chiron in Libra. I can't remember what house it was in, but it was with Libra, that you might feel worthy when someone accepts you, and then when they reject you, you feel unworthy. Like your your confidence level and how you view yourself is very dependent on how someone else views you. So, a lesson here is to not take rejections and let them define who you are or your lovability or your worthiness, because that really has nothing to do with that. It will feel like that though. It's important for you to learn that relationships need to be mutual, and celebration of being together, and not just an attempt to not be alone, right? So this person might struggle to form relationships from a, what's the word I'm looking for a place of security, from a place from security, right? When we attract a relationship due to insecurity, it's most likely going to be unhealthy. So although you might fear being alone, your greatest healing will come from learning to love yourself, being your own best friend, and not letting other people's acceptance or rejection dictate how you feel about yourself. So as you heal this wound within yourself and become, independent on your own, love yourself on your own, you will be able to form healthy relationships, and you might become a relationship expert or a couples therapist or someone who helps other people heal codependency, for example. There are many other things you could do, but that's just one example. So if you have Chiron in Scorpio or the 8th house, this is, Scorpio is always a powerful one. But basically you are here to do some deep work when it comes to your connections with other people, and maybe even your deep psychological traumas, and maybe even sex for some people. When we think of the 8th house, we think of intimacy, sex, transformations, death, all those taboo topics, deep psychology. So, you probably have some gifts when it comes to empathy and maybe even some psychic ability. But because the 8th house is about, death, there might have been a great loss early in life. So maybe someone died. It could be a literal death, or it could just be that you suffered unimaginable trauma, whatever that might be. And you might have been made to feel very afraid or powerless. As a result of this early trauma, you may worry about losing possessions. You may struggle with intimacy because there's that fear of losing someone else again. So, this is a pretty heavy, complicated house, but there might be some lessons when it comes to intimacy and trust due to that early wound or trauma. For some of you, if there are intimacy or sexual issues, it could be because there was a violation at a very young age when it comes to your body. Someone might have violated you, and as a result, you now struggle with intimacy. It's interesting though, because Scorpio is like the phoenix rising from the ashes. Scorpio does talk about transformation, and Chiron wants to transform this. So this is a really powerful placement. And your lesson is to really learn how to accept your sexuality or personal power, right? Where you were once powerless, powerless, is that the right word? I can't talk today. Where you once lacked power or felt like you were had no power. This is where you need to transform that and find your inner power again. Now, for some, it could go the other way, right? We overcompensate. So people need to be careful of this placement, that they could abuse this energy. And maybe, the saying, hurt people hurt people. I can see that playing out in this energy where someone hurt you and took advantage of you. And so you're maybe acting out and doing that to other people, consciously or not. So just be mindful of that. Another lesson might be involved with sharing, whether that's sharing your time, energy, emotions, or your physical resources. Trust is a huge thing here. And I think that something happened at an early age that broke that trust. And until you learn to trust yourself and that you can keep yourself safe, you're going to be constantly triggered over and over again until you face this wound and heal it. If you heal this, you're just going to be a force to be reckoned with. There are so many things you could do. This is a very psychic house, right? So you could, awaken psychic powers, or this is also the deep psychology house. Maybe you become a transformational therapist who helps other people transform through trauma, right? Maybe you end up working in trauma, right? So you've been through this trauma, you transform it, and now you can help other people work through theirs. So the next one is Chiron in Sagittarius, or the ninth house. So there is a wound when it comes to Sagittarius or ninth house energy. So when I think of Sagittarius, I think of belief systems, perspective, religion, spirituality. The ninth house is also like those same things, but like law, philosophy. The first thing that jumps out to me in a very simple example is someone who might have experienced spiritual abuse. So we know people who grew up as Jehovah's Witnesses or in some types of cults, and as a result, their belief systems are very skewed, even when they break free from these confinements, that we know as adults they still struggle with that early imprinting and just the paradigms that were put into them at a very young age. And even though they're consciously aware that that is not their truth, they still struggle with it. So that is something that this could represent for you. As a result, they may struggle with their beliefs. They may not believe in anything, right? Maybe at a young age, something happened that made them question spirituality or religion or God. And as a result, they struggle with what they want to believe in, or if they believe in anything at all. Overall, this is also like the house of faith. So learning how to find your unique faith and worldview and perspectives will be really healing for you. And to find it all on your own, right? Like you might have to undo all the old stories that were told, or if you grew up in a really religious background and now you're not, you might have to go on your own kind of voyage to discover what your beliefs are. And maybe that involves long distance travel, because the ninth house does cover foreign land and travel. When I think of Sagittarius in the ninth house, I also think of higher education, like university. I think of teaching, mentoring. So there might have been a wound involved in one of these topics. So maybe you are the first person to go to college in your family system, and that's, scary for you. And there's a wound there, like maybe I'm not smart enough. Maybe I can't do that. Maybe you were told that you weren't smart enough. Maybe you were in a situation that was abusive and people questioned your ability to pursue your higher aspirations. For some, maybe you really struggled with school, and you're going to transform that through going to school yourself and becoming a teacher or a mentor of some sort. The other way that this could turn out, because we can overcompensate, is that you might hold on so tightly to a belief system, but it's not working for you. It's not your path, and it might be pushing people away. It might be harming your relationships. So just to be careful that you're not holding on so tightly to your version of the truth, and to know that several truths exist. It could also be that you grew up in a religious background that kind of took it to another level. And so you shun that religion completely, when maybe you just didn't really have the right understanding or the right teachings. And so you, I don't know if I'm making sense, but let's just say you grew up Christian, but it was very radical or restrictive or something, and so you have this view of Christians when really that's not what all Christians are like, or something like that. And so again, really important to understand that your truth is not the only truth. You have to be really careful about not becoming too dogmatic here, but you do have a lot of energy. You have the ability to become a wonderful mentor or a teacher, as long as you're not too rigid in those beliefs. The ninth house also is long distance travel, worldly exploration, adventure. So there might be a wound related to one of those things if the other things didn't resonate. I'm not sure what that could mean. Maybe, something traumatic happened when you went on a long distance trip. But the big things are faith, spirituality, and religion, I think, that are popping out for me here. By adopting like Sagittarius traits and being like an adventurer, the forever eternal student, this is how I feel like you can heal this wound, whatever specific wound it may be related to these topics I just covered. Um, and yeah, I think that kind of covers this one. So, if you have Chiron in Capricorn or the 10th house, so the 10th house sits at the top of the chart. Capricorn rules the father. It's a very leadership energy. The 10th house is our public reputation, our career. So, one way I can see this working, like manifesting, is that you might be a workaholic in order to prove your self-worth and to gain self-respect. You might have been rejected in some manner as a child. You might have felt ignored. You might have felt out of control as a child. And so now you are, maintaining all that control. You might have had to be a parent to a parent. And so you just have this natural leadership ability and feeling like you are responsible and need to take the lead and build, and that's where the workaholic tendencies can come in. There's a strong need for respect and status, but to be careful here that it's not in excess to the point where you lose sight of friends and stuff, and are so focused on just building that you forget to stop and smell the roses, or that you don't even recognize your own little accomplishments. It's almost like nothing is good enough for you. So make sure that that is not you. If it is, this is just something you have to process. To learn this lesson, you're going to need to learn how to acknowledge your own value, and that your status does not equate to your worthiness. Often, people with Chiron and Capricorn or the 10th house don't recognize how much achievement they've done, like they don't take note of their achievements, and they already have so much status, but it's like they don't recognize it. It's like not enough yet. And again, it's because there's this subconscious desire to prove yourself. So just to be careful that it doesn't become obsessive. You have wonderful leadership qualities, but it needs to be controlled, or you can become kind of more like dictating to the people you work for and pushing people away because of that. There could also be a wound related to an authority figure or the father, because the 10th house can often talk about the father. Again, a very simple way, it's like someone wasn't accepted by their father or rejected, and so they are subconsciously trying to continue to prove themselves to the father or this authority figure by achieving status and power in their career. So just to be careful that you're not setting the bar too high and you're overburdening yourself, because if you're doing that to yourself, you're probably inevitably going to be doing that to others. But once you heal this, you can help other people achieve their goals and help them achieve status. And the goal here is to know that, if status is what you want, that's okay. Some people want that, but to make sure that it's not tied into your self-worth, right? If you just want this goal because it's just a really good goal and you like to push yourself, that's one thing. But if you're doing it because it's making you feel like that's the only way that you're acceptable or lovable or worthy, that's when we need to do some work here. So the key is to accept yourself as you are. Heal any relationship with an authority figure or father figure. Again, that doesn't mean we accept their behavior or think it was allowed. It doesn't mean that we have a relationship with this person, but it does mean that we forgive it and let it go, so it no longer controls our life. I mean, for other people too, like depending on, like, let's just say it was the 10th, Chiron was in the 10th house, but maybe it was in a different zodiac sign. The 10th house is also like how other people see us. So there could be a wound in terms of your public reputation. So I think of people who are in the spotlight. So whether that be celebrities or politicians or something like that, there could be a wound related to that as well. So always look to the sign as well as the house. So I just wanted to add that there. So the next one is Chiron in Aquarius or the 11th house. I am quite familiar with this one as I have Chiron in my 11th house. So, when I think of Chiron and Aquarius, Aquarius is very quirky. And so there's almost like a wound about being yourself. But Aquarius is also the collective. The 11th house is groups. So there's a wound when it comes to feeling uncomfortable in large groups of people. So this can stem from feeling different when you were younger. This can stem from maybe being rejected either in your own family system or through groups of people. You could have felt very disconnected or isolated growing up. Maybe you grew up where you were a minority, right? Maybe no one looked like you. And I mean, all the Chirons are difficult. This one's difficult because this person needs to learn how to be themselves and cherish their differences despite who they're around. And that can be really hard. So really learning how to be comfortable in your own skin, really learning that you don't have to belong to a group to be valuable and worthy. And it's okay if you're different. There could also be rejection from peers from being different in some way. So as a result, this person might feel very uncomfortable in large groups or new groups. You might also just feel like weird. Like that's the best way to say it. Like just that, you know, Aquarius is very quirky. So maybe you don't feel safe to be who you are. Another wounding here with the 11th house is friends. So there could be some trauma or wounding or lessons when it comes to friendships. It can indicate friends who are like maybe that your friends are kind of just different in general. It can mean that the wound that you've experienced is due to friends, right? That they hurt you or betrayed you in some way. And I mean, until you learn the lessons that this Chiron placement wants to teach you, you might struggle with just feeling like you don't fit in, feeling like you're not accepted, feeling like you just don't belong. As a result, you might attract people who take advantage of you. You might be very people-pleasing in these friendships or groups. The alternative is that you reject groups completely. Maybe you're just a little hermit and you don't connect with anyone. In order to heal, you know, it's really important to learn that, you know, it's okay to be different than everyone else. And that doesn't mean that you can't be connected or belong. And healing will begin once you learn that it's your differences that make you so valuable. And as, you know, a person with Chiron in Aquarius or 11th, as you learn that you're different and unique and that you're okay with that, you're going to kind of step into your power a little, and you're actually going to attract people that are your tribe, right? Maybe they have the same quirks that you have and stuff. Or as a result, your energy is just going to shift. And so you won't need to belong to everyone in order to feel comfortable in a group. So the key here is to learn how to, you know, contribute to society with a greater sense of purpose and belonging, but also to not let go of your individual identity for the purpose of the group. So you have to learn how to be unique within that group and maintain your authentic self. So be weird, be, you know, unique, and just truly be who you are. That is how you're going to attract your tribe. And but there will be triggers with the 11th house. I will say, just to share a little bit about how this shows up for me with my 11th house in particular with Chiron, is that I was adopted, and so I feel like that has played into my struggles with belonging in new groups. You know, I move around a lot, and so I constantly am being triggered by being in a new environment with new people and new cultures. And learning that I have this Chiron has been super helpful for me to understand that this is going to keep happening until I go within and deal with those inner core wounds. So that's just one way it can play out. But what else? I'm just trying to think if there's anything else with Aquarius and the 11th house. The 11th house is also our biggest hopes and dreams and wishes. And so maybe you have some pretty big hopes and like long-term dreams that you want. And by healing these wounds, you're not only more equipped to reach those, but even just to admit that you have those, right? Maybe those dreams are a little bit different than the average person, right? Because we're dealing with Aquarius here, right? This is a very quirky energy. But overall, healing is going to have to occur when it comes to your identity and relationships to groups. The last one is Chiron in Pisces, or the 12th house. So a few things come to mind here. So the first thing is, like, for example, if you have Chiron in the 12th house, you may literally feel like you are from another planet, like that you are not supposed to be here. It's like just feeling like you don't belong here. Pisces is all about, and the 12th house is all about endings, loss. It's the house of mental illness, addictions, things like that. So there might be some addictions here. You might be someone who struggles with, whether it's alcoholism, drugs. I mean, we could be addicted to anything. It doesn't have to just be substances. The 12th house also deals with like the subconscious and past lives and karma. So there might be some just wounds that you're playing out in this lifetime in general, right? There just might be some karmic dues to pay off. And I always say that the 12th house it's like the wounds that we don't know we have. So you could be someone who self-sabotages without really understanding what the motive behind the behavior is. Because Pisces is, think of Neptune, no bounds. You might have a blind spot when it comes to seeing your own potential. You tend not to really look at truths about yourselves, or others for that matter. And so as a result, you can get yourself into some tricky situations because you see the best in other people. Maybe you had a very manipulative parent. Maybe you had a parent who had drug issues, addictions, something like that. And the 12th house in Pisces is like, it's a collective energy, not in the way like of Aquarius, but it's a very spiritual energy, and universal is a good way to term it. So there might be a wound when it comes to losing trust in the universe. You might not really believe in, that we're all connected, for example. Maybe you've been through a lot, right? The 12th house is the house of loss. Maybe you've had a lot of loss. Maybe you've had a lot of hurt. And as a result, you just feel like you've been forgotten, or like that the universe isn't kind. Like there can't be a universe. There can't be a higher power. There might be a sense of betrayal as well. And sometimes with this energy, it's tricky because it is in this hidden, murky area that you might not even understand why you feel like this, but you can't quite grasp why or where this came from, but that you just have this sense of betrayal. The universe failed you. They weren't there for you when you needed. There is a sense of victimization here. So that is a sign that you're dealing with Chiron if that comes up for you. And I mean, again, it can show up in different ways because we tend to compensate, right? So you could take on that victimhood role and feel like, you were dealt a bad hand. No one else experiences this stuff except for you. It's not really fair. Or you could feel the opposite, that you're not deserving from the universe. Maybe it's because you feel the suffering of the world so deeply. Pisces is very intuitive and kind of lives in the spiritual realm. So even if you don't victimize yourself, in a typical way, you might create this victim mentality by just getting stuck in the pain of others. And so due to feeling the pain from others, you might just feel that the world is unfair. So again, this could show up a few ways. You might be like a cynic, like you might repel spirituality, anything like that. You might not have empathy for others because no one showed empathy towards you. So you might cut people off, right? Or you identify with the underdog and you have this rescue nature in you. You want to rescue others and have this just immense sympathy for anyone who's struggling, because you can relate to that. Really careful here to not get too attached to your, I think, what does Eckhart Tolle call it? Pain body here. I can see that happening here, where you are so, you identify so much with your pain that you don't know who you are without it. I can see that happening with this energy. So just to be careful there. And how this wound came can be, I mean, again, it's usually from childhood, and we all experience wounds in different ways, and how we manifest them or articulate them are different depending on, our unique charts and personalities and whatnot. But at some point, you probably needed something from someone and you didn't get it. So as a child, as a baby, as an infant, and you articulated that, you translated that to, I am not important, I don't matter. Maybe your parents were workaholics. Maybe your parents were drug addicts, right? Some people grow up with parents who were unavailable in other ways, like they had food on the table and stuff, but the parents didn't emotionally validate their children, and their children all grow up with different wounds depending on, how each of them manifests that energy. What you don't want to do with Chiron here is run away or escape, or so escapism could happen through just ignoring your problems, or it could happen through drugs. You don't want to do that. The way to face it is to literally face it, to lean into it. So sit with your pain, talk to your pain, get curious about it. And it's really important to find out what is true and what is not, because with this murky energy, it can be hard to see the truth. You can be very disillusioned, and you can often deceive yourself. So maybe working with a therapist would be really helpful. I mean, I think all of us should be working with a therapist, but especially for this placement, just because it's so hard to articulate it, because it's in this weird murky house that has no boundaries. It's not a physical house that has that's tangible, like the sixth house, for example. If you can process this pain and heal it and integrate it, you can become a wonderful healer because of your deep compassion for all beings. You're able to see that we're all connected, and you can just become you could become a spiritual healer, if anything, as well. And, this isn't to invalidate your experiences, because you may have been dealt, a shitty hand of cards. There may have been a lot of loss and pain. But by avoiding looking at that pain and just giving up on life, or being cynical and pushing people away, or by playing victim, you're just going to keep repeating this cycle, and you're going to constantly be triggered, right? Chiron is going to keep triggering you, just naturally through life, and then through certain aspects, right? And that can be just kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, where you just keep reliving the same story over and over again. So it's going to be up to you to interrupt that storyline and choose to see it differently and to transform it. I want to end with saying that many of our greatest healers have suffered an immense amount of trauma and loss and pain. And I find that really interesting. And I always think of Chiron. Like, for example, Eckhart Tolle is one. I believe he was highly suicidal and depressed for several years. He tried to kill himself multiple times, I believe. And so he's a really good example of transforming that pain into something beautiful, where he now helps thousands of people heal and understand themselves better. So just keep that in mind for Chiron and Pisces in the 12th house. So I think that is all I have to say for these signs. I sometimes I prepare for these videos, so I'm a bit more organized, but it takes a lot more time. So I just kind of freestyled today. So I hope it wasn't a hot mess, but hopefully you guys gained something from this. Know that this is just a brief synopsis. We could talk about each of these placements for a lifetime. I'm no expert in Chiron by any means. And also it depends on what other planets are sitting in that house, how they're aspected to Chiron, that will make a difference as well, and that will add another layer. So this is just a very basic overview. Feel free to post your Chiron if you're comfortable sharing. I kind of shared a bit of mine in hopes that, others might feel more comfortable sharing what it's meant for them. Please message me if you don't know where your Chiron is and you'd like to know. I'd be happy to get that information to you. And as always, just like, share, subscribe, comment. I love to hear comments, and stay tuned for some more videos.